A major statewide program just launched, the Strengthen Oklahoma Homes Grant, offering eligible homeowners the opportunity to upgrade their roofs to nationally recognized fortified standards, built to stand up to hail, high winds, and extreme weather. But what does that actually mean? How does it work? And most importantly, who can you trust to do the work right? To help us answer these questions, we're joined by someone who's not just qualified. He's one of only a handful of contractors in the entire state authorized to install fortified roofs under this program. Scott McCollum, founder of McRoof, has spent decades on rooftops across Oklahoma, building a reputation for doing things the right way, long before grant money or policy change made it trendy. In this conversation, we're cutting through the noise. You'll learn what the Fortified Standard actually is, how this grant works, and why it matters to Oklahomans, what to expect if you do move forward, from evaluation all the way to installation, and why programs like this are changing the roofing industry for the better. If you own a home in Oklahoma, or you've ever dealt with storm damage, this is the episode that could save you time, money, and a whole lot of future headaches. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Chris, this is one of those things that is just so critical for home and business owners in Oklahoma to understand. We have long treated roofs as commodities. We haven't really been building the kinds of roofs that we should have been building in Oklahoma for years and years. The roofing industry has a lot of responsibility in that, and the way they've kind of dumbed things down and been about the low price or the cost, and that's not selling value, not selling systems roofs, not really enhancing the quality of the roof systems on homes and apartments and commercial buildings and all structures in Oklahoma. The reality of it is that a roof is the second most important system in any structure after only the foundation. And the roof is the number one system when it comes to weather shedding. It is what protects lives and protects property, and we should not be treating roofs as commodities. We should be understanding that there are products and there are systems and there are methodologies out there that will produce roofs that actually stand up to everything that Mother Nature throws to us here in Oklahoma and throughout the Hail Belt and Tornado Alley. This is critically important for people to kind of reset, rethink, and understand the critical nature of that roof when it comes to protecting them.
A lot of homeowners are going to be very surprised to hear that these roofs can actually survive Oklahoma weather, though.
Well, it's one of those things that the things that I hear over and over again, I hear it through the roofing and restoration industry. I hear it from consumers of all ilks. Well, it's just a roof and there's going to be another storm and the insurance company is going to pay for it. So why should we invest in better? Well, there's a lot of reasons you should invest in better. Number one, this is about lives and this is about protecting property. That should be all the motivation you need to invest in better. But beyond that, the reality is that insurance companies get their brains beat out with essentially wind and hail losses, predominantly hail in this part of the country. And we can install roof systems in Oklahoma that will stand up to the hail that Mother Nature throws at us here. I have been installing systems roofs in Oklahoma for over 15 years, where we're taking a systems being one manufacturer's products that were designed to be installed in a certain way with a premium impact resistant product on top and proper ventilation incorporated into that assembly. Those roofs perform. Those roofs have been performing. I've got roofs that I put on 20 years ago that essentially look like the day I put them on. And they've been through every bit of weather that Oklahoma has thrown at them for all these years, and they're still there. Now, some of those older roofs from, the 2010s up to about 2015, 16, 17, we are replacing a few of those roofs. Generally, they're not getting replaced because they're destroyed by hail. They're getting replaced because those products are now discontinued. We have gone, that was the old technology. That was what was called scrim technology, where essentially asphalt was applied on a fiberglass mat. And the concept was that the fiberglass mat would then distribute the energy from the impact of the hail throughout the entire field of the shingle, so it wasn't that point impact. Okay. In other words, it dissipated the energy throughout the entire area of the shingle. That's how that technology worked. And it was beautiful. I mean, that was my go to technology, what I've been building in Oklahoma forever that has served the clients here. Most of those roofs are still in place, just like they were the day I put them on. In 2017, 2018, we morphed. I was watching the testing on what is called SBS modified asphalt polymer technology. I was looking at the developments of the new, commonly known as flex technologies, and looking at performance in what we know as severe hail, which is hail over 2 inches. And in all of the testing, I could see that the new technology, the flex technology, was going to outperform my old scrim technology by 20, 30, 40% in an event of severe hail. Well, as a roofing contractor, as a restoration contractor who feels a duty to our clients to protect them, I have to show them the best of what I have available to them. So I immediately made the decision that I was no longer going to install what had been my default shingle for all these years. I was no longer going to install that. I was going to change all of my clients. We took every contract that was in place for the old technology, went to every one of those clients, explained to them the benefits of the new technology, and moved them into SBS modified technology. I have never replaced one of those roofs in Oklahoma for hail damage. I replaced the first one I have ever replaced last year or early this year. It was damaged by tornado debris impact. It was literally scoured by someone else's house blown apart, blowing across the roof and destroying the roof. But that is the only SBS modified flex technology roof that I have ever replaced. Now, in the year since 2018, the old scrim technology has now been discontinued by the manufacturer. Therefore, some of those roofs get minor damage and ultimately end up getting replaced because they're discontinued shingles, not because they're damaged in such a way that they must be replaced. They simply are not repairable because you don't have products to repair them with. So that's kind of how that works. The truth of the matter is that we have roofs that have been through hail in excess of 5 inches in Oklahoma, and that hail did not touch this technology. Okay. So when I tell people that I'm installing a systems roof, I'm installing a roof with SBS Flex technology, I honestly believe that roof is going to be here short of a high EF2 or above tornado wind event. That roof is going to be here for 25, 30, 40 years. And assuming that roof is installed correctly with proper ventilation, which all of my roofs are, it is going to perform to a level that everyone is getting benefit and value from. And the insurance company's loss ratios are going to reflect the performance of these enhanced systems and these enhanced shingle technologies.
It's still fascinating to me that these roofs are able to handle that high of hail.
The things that are frustrating to me, Chris, and I hear this all the time, I hear it in the roofing community, I hear it from consumers, is that consumers tend not to believe when I say things like that. There's a little doubt about, well, we don't really believe that things perform that way. We can prove it to you on thousands and thousands of roofs. I have tons and tons of consumers who would be happy to tell you that their neighbors have had 2 or 3 roofs in the period of time since I installed their roof. And that was the old technology, and their roof is still there. So systems roofs, impact resistant technology, certainly the new flex technology, those roofs will perform, assuming they're properly ventilated. I keep coming back to ventilation because the number one mistake on every install, almost every install, I can find something wrong with the way the ventilation was done. It was either not calculated correctly, it didn't reflect the intake ventilation, it is mixing different ventilation types in a common attic, it is improper placement on the roof, or it is the wrong amount of ventilation. And all these errors basically take away the value and the benefits that would have come from that tremendous shingle that the homeowners, consumers invested in, or that tremendous technology that they invested in, because the ventilation was done incorrectly. We are on roofs that we have built with the systems, with the flex technology, with the ventilation, and the roof is absolutely pristine. And we're looking at roofs that are 3 to 5 years old next door that were impact resistant shingles that were installed, I assume, in some type of a systems manner, but yet they were improperly ventilated. Those shingles are already blistered. They're already heat fractured. They're already brittle. They will not accept what wind does to the shingle, and they will not accept severe hail impact anymore because the shingles have been destroyed by heat.
I know that we've mentioned the Fortified in the introduction. So what makes
Yes, sir.
what makes Fortified different from what you're already doing with your own company?
This is the way that I describe Fortified. We at McRoof have always been a certaintied contractor. We have always said we do one thing better than anybody else. We build certaintied integrity roof systems. That means all certaintied products installed exactly per the manufacturer's requirements, prescriptive, everything required to be done, proper starter course, proper shingle, proper ventilation and ridge accessories. That roof is a systems roof, integrity roof system. Fortified roof with a high wind and hail standard, integrity on steroids. This is the next level of protection for consumers, and it has to do with prescriptive manner in which this system has to be applied. So now I'm taking CertainTeed's integrity roof system, I'm morphing that into a fortified high wind and hail designated roof. So now it is the integrity roof system with all of the additional requirements above and beyond that Fortified puts into their roof designation program. And now we have integrity on steroids equals Fortified high wind and hail designated roof. That's what it is. And we can go into all the things that are required in Fortified that are additional steps from what we typically have done in integrity roof system. All manufacturers have a system. Every manufacturer has credentialed contractors who theoretically have been trained in the application installation of their products to where they deliver a systems roof. Manufacturers typically provide what we call enhanced warranties. Instead of the warranty out of the box, instead of the standard warranty, these systems roofs typically come with enhanced warranties, or at least enhanced warranties that can be purchased. These warranties get into things like providing 50-year manufacturer warranties on material defects, 25 years warranties on labor, things like that. This is available in systems roofs. In IBHS fortified roof designated properties, you have everything that you were going to get in a system's roof, plus all of these other things that are really, these are over and above manufacturing requirements. These are over and above any building code. And I'm gonna diverge for a minute. I want to talk a little bit about building codes, and I want to make something crystal clear to anyone who's listening. Building codes are minimal standards. Building codes are primarily focused on safety, life, those kinds of things. Okay. They are minimal standards for construction. Chris, how many things in your life do you purchase or invest in where you're looking for a product or a service or a system that meets a minimal standard?
It's not recommended, that's for sure. Typically, minimum means like that is the absolute bare minimum that is viable, but not actually what you're looking for, right? So,
Kind of seems to me like it means that somebody can probably legally manufacture or offer it in that manner, and that, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind. So what we're looking for is we're looking for some significantly better than minimal. Okay. And in this case, in Fortified, IBHS Fortified, we're talking about people who have been studying all kinds of storm events. Essentially, they're dealing with hurricane winds, they're dealing with straight line winds, they're dealing with seismic things, they're dealing with fire, they're dealing with water of all types. So think of the areas of the country that have the most severe weather. Think of the coastal areas and those areas that have all of the hurricanes, the tropical storms, and all those kinds of things all along our southern and eastern seaboard. Look at the heartland and look at what we deal with in the heartland in terms of wind and hail. Look at kind of the southeastern part of the United States, and we know that Tornado Alley has moved over the last few years. It kind of is tending to be a little bit further south than what it used to be, and maybe a little bit further east from where it traditionally was. But you have these areas where you have natural phenomena that we need to build structures that can stand up to what Mother Nature is going to throw at those areas. And so they have come up with these standards through intense testing. They've got wind farms, they have huge arrays of fans to produce the wind-driven rain, all kinds of hail and impact testing to see what happens in tornadoes, what happens in hail, what happens in high wind-driven rain, what happens in hurricanes, and all those things. And from that, through years and years of development, they've been able to come up with prescriptive ways of building these structures and installing the roofs in such a way that you have an expectation that you're going to weather the storm. And that's really what this is about. This is about mitigating a significant percentage of damage that typically would occur in structures in particular types of events and limiting the effects of that, not just for the insurance company, limiting it for the consumer. This is about protecting lives and protecting property, and that's what people need to be investing in.
so as Oklahomans, there are programs now that do exist to help allow homeowners to make this more accessible. So you want to talk more about Strengthen Oklahoma Homes program and really where that came from?
The Oklahoma Insurance Department, Commissioner Glenn Mulready, they're looking at everything that they can do to basically stem the tide in terms of what we consider to be an insurance crisis. We have an availability crisis to some degree. We certainly have an affordability crisis. Everybody knows that insurance premiums in Oklahoma have been, consistently among the very highest in the country. And looking at where the losses come from, it's pretty obvious that in this part of the country, most of our losses come from hail, quite honestly, high winds and hail. But hail is the number one contributor to the significant loss losses of the insurance company. So what can we do as a state? What can we do as communities to start to turn the tide on this? And the commissioner, in conversations with other parts of the country and the things that they're dealing with, started looking at IBHS Fortified. A lot of the folks that he visited with and the people that we've talked to were in the Gulf Coast area, Alabama and Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana. Those states have fortified grant programs through the state insurance departments where they've been doing this for a few years. These grant programs create $10,000 grants in Oklahoma. The legislature approved this $10,000 grants for folks who, number one, you have to own the property. It has to be insured, and the property has to qualify for the grant program. There's some things we can get into about how that process works once you get into the grant program. But essentially, at the end of the day, the grant program is intended to put $10,000 towards a consumer's ability to fortify their roof to a high wind and hail designation. So the idea is that this is another tool and another opportunity for folks to be educated about building better practices, about IBHS Fortified through the grant program, and their ability to actually be able to have that financial incentive to do the right thing to enhance and improve their own protection and to diminish the possibility of there being insured losses. That's really what it's all about.
How would Oklahomans be able to take advantage of it?
What happens is, and we've rolled the program out, OID has rolled the program out in stages. So we now just rolled out the second stage of the program this past Monday, May the 6th. The first rollout was 100 grants, wanted to kind of, crawl before they walk, want to make sure we've got all the issues and everything, that the evaluators, the contractors, everybody understands the program, things are being done the way they're supposed to be done. The first rollout was 100 grants. This rollout, May 6th, was 250 grants. These are done by zip codes. The zip codes are published on the Strengthen Oklahoma Homes website. You can see the zip codes that are listed there. If you're in one of those zip codes, you own a property and you have insurance on it, you can click the button and get into the grant program. So until the 250 are gone, of course, and then it will be shut down again. And then we'll have another rollout, I believe, in July or August, and then one final one late in the year that will bring us up to a total of $10,000 grants this year. That's what the goal for the program is. The way this works for the consumer, again, you log in, you enter your information, you grab one of the assignments for that allotment of grants. Once you're in and approved or accepted into the program, you'll get a notification from OID saying that it's time for you to select your evaluator. So what's this evaluator guy? The evaluator has a different role than what the contractor has. The evaluator is simply the person who's going to, number one, do what's called a pre-evaluation. That's an evaluation to look at your foundation type, to look at your structure, your dwelling type, to look at your framing in your attic, to make sure that your framing and your decking are going to be compliant with. In other words, your home can be brought up to fortified standards. That's what that pre-evaluation looks like. Then what happens is once your pre-evaluation is done and that information is entered in the Oklahoma Homes website, you'll get another notification from OID saying that it is now time to select your 3 contractor bidders. You have to choose your evaluator from an approved list. You have to choose your 3 contractor bidders from an approved list. Now, what I tell everyone, you do not have to select the lowest priced contractor. OID doesn't really care. You have to have 3 bids, and they're going to make sure that all the 3 bids are, have everything in them that they should have in them. I got a notice the other day on one of mine said, "Hey, do you have the decking repairs in here, or do you need to add a line item?" Actually, I had it in there, but I didn't show it, so they didn't know I had it in there. But so in other words, they're looking at this. They're not looking at it to choose the lowest bidder. They're not looking at it for that. They're just looking at it to make sure that you have 3 bids that really do encompass the scope of work that's necessary based on the evaluator's pre-evaluation. Okay. And then, but as a consumer, you choose the contractor that you feel like is going to serve your needs and someone that's going to protect and take care of your family and your property. So the 3 bids are submitted by the 3 contractors, and then you'll get a note from OID saying it's time to select your contractor. You select your contractor gets a note from OID saying it's time to submit your contract. And now you're into the process and you're ready to schedule and build your roof to fortified standards. When you get ready to build your roof, the contractor will notify the evaluator. The evaluator will be on site to check all the materials to make sure that they are all compliant with the products required for the designation. Go over everything that is required of the contractor from a photo documentation standpoint, make sure their cameras are all set to be geotagged, make sure they know everything that they're going to have to do for the evaluator once the evaluator gets in his vehicle and leaves the site. That is not the evaluator's job to stay there all day long for a day or two or however long it takes to document everything that happens on that roof. That is the contractor's responsibility. Okay. So now the roof is done. Everything is complete. The contractor has taken all of the photos and documentation that is required and has submitted it to the evaluator. The evaluator has that. He has the contractor's affidavit. He has a statement from OID that has been sent to the contractor that has been signed as an affidavit for OID. And now the evaluator has everything he needs to submit for quote unquote audit to IBHS audit team. The evaluator submits all that information to IBHS audit team. They review all of the documentation. The documentation is the critical element here. They review all of the documentation. If there's anything missing, they let the evaluator know there's something missing. If there's anything amiss, they let the evaluator know that. Hopefully by this point, there's not anything that was done incorrectly that the evaluator hasn't already caught, had the contractor notified and had corrected and documented as well. But at that point, once everything's cleaned up, the designation is issued. Designation is not sent to the consumer. The designation is sent to the evaluator. The evaluator will deliver the designation to the consumer and collect his fee. Typically, the way I do this as an evaluator is when I do the pre-evaluation, I collect 1/2 of my fee. My fee, by the way, is $750. So I collect $375 when I do the pre-evaluation and the home is going to be eligible for the program. If I go out to do a pre-evaluation and there is an element of the structure that is going to disqualify it, I do not charge the people the $375. I simply tell them that their home is not going to qualify and notify the grant coordinator that home is not going to qualify. So then when I deliver the designation certificate, that's when I collect the other $375. Now, when the consumer has that designation certificate, it's got a number on it. That is their designation number. That certificate and that number is what they're going to want to provide to their insurance agent or producer. They're going to want to provide to their insurance company. And that designation should drive benefits to them from the standpoint of preferred pricing, terms, and conditions on their insurance contract. That's where we're trying to get to. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's the way the process rolls out.
Wow. So just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So not only is the consumer have a grant program to help fortify their roof, they're also going to have a fortified roof to help protect their assets and not have to replace their roof every 5 to 7 years like everyone else in Oklahoma.
Yes,
And
sir.
if I'm understanding correctly, the insurance company should actually lower premiums.
The insurance companies right now are all working on their fortified endorsements. Okay. And so there will actually be a fortified endorsement. Going to do a couple things. Number one, it's going to indicate that if your roof is built to those standards, it's going to trickle into some rate effect for you as an individual homeowner or business owner. All right. And then number two, it's also going to say that if you have that and your roof is destroyed, they're going to pay to restore it to that condition. All right. I don't believe that's probably going to happen very often. Again, short of that high EF2 or EF3 type situation. But in the event that your roof is destroyed, obviously they're going to pay you significantly more for that roof than they would have paid you for a standard roof. So there's a couple considerations there. So we talked a little bit about designation. We've talked about fortified roof right here in Oklahoma in the heartland with high wind and hail designation. That's the standard. Okay. High wind and hail designation is a different designation than what people in the Gulf Coast or the East Coast would get. They would get a hurricane designation. Okay. So there are multiple designations within fortified roof. Now, there's a lot more than fortified roof. After fortified roof, which we say that's our starting place because that's where we can have the greatest impact in mitigating these insured losses from wind and hail and providing the protections and affecting the insurance landscape. That's why we start there. But beyond that, concepts that people need to be aware of is that there's fortified home, silver, and gold. Fortified home silver addresses exterior openings, windows, doors, garage doors, things like that. Now, let me tell you that once I brought your roof up to fortified standards with a high wind and hail designation in Oklahoma, I'm going to tell you as a consumer, the next thing that you should ever be thinking about doing is replacing your garage door, because your garage door is going to be your next point of failure in a wind event, in a tornadic event or a high straight line wind event. The garage doors that most people have are not wind rated to the degree that they need to be. They would not meet the fortified standard for a silver home. They don't meet the wind rating and they don't meet the impact rating. In other words, projectile impact. All right. And so this applies to windows, doors, garage doors, things like that. The concept's really simple. We've kept the roof on. All right. Even if we've lost the cladding, we've kept the roof on. The next breach point is in those exterior doors, windows, garage doors. When the structure is breached, the structure is pressurized. You get all the uplift pressures on the roof. You get all the outward pressures on the exterior walls. That's why you see homes look like a bomb went off. They literally are pressurized, and essentially that is what happened. A bomb did go off. You can avoid all this. You can avoid this. We start with the roof, then we move into fortified home silver, which is those exterior elements that need to be fortified. Then we move into, for new construction and for remodeling and things, additions, we have the fortified gold standard, which is roof, walls, exterior openings, and a load path transfer from the roof to the walls to the floor to the foundation. Everything is together. And that's what the fortified gold home standard is. We have fortified for commercial properties. We have fortified for multifamily properties. And we also have a fortified wildfire readiness program. And these are all concepts that I'm going to spend the rest of my life educating people about and making sure that people know. Whether there's a grant program or not, that is not the point. The point is we have to make decisions. My company feels it's a duty to educate people about these concepts so that they can make decisions that are in their best interest to the degree that they can make that work for them financially. Okay. We understand financial constraints, right? But we also understand that if you don't educate people about simple things that can be done that protect lives and protect property, then we haven't done our job. As a company, that's what our job is. Our job's not to sell roofs. Our job is to educate people about how they can protect themselves and have things that will perform for them long term against the weather that we face in Oklahoma. So
That's phenomenal. So you are an approved contractor for the Oklahoma grant program. So let's say that someone was to select you as one of the three bids, right? So what would that look like?
okay, so basically, if we get a note, and I get notifications, we get notifications through the portal. Sometimes we'll have people that call our office that are actually trying to do some homework and figure out who they want to choose as their contractor. Sometimes people have knowledge of us and see us on the list and select us without contacting us. Depending on how that comes out, we start just like any introduction or invitation into a relationship with anybody coming into our company, whether it's a form fill or whether it's a phone call to the office or whatever. It starts exactly the same way. We're going to do an outreach to that person. We're going to make sure that they've, got a clear understanding of their responsibilities financially through this process, how this is all going to play out. Make sure that they understand what the bidding process is going to look like, that they understand that they do not have to choose the lowest bid, that they need to select the contractor that they believe is most qualified, competent, capable, professional, who's going to treat them with the human dignity that they're entitled to and respect their property and things like that. So we have those conversations, a little introduction to McRoof. People refer to the website if they haven't already been there to get the values proposition. But then we start just where we start with everything. It's that inspection, the inspection of their property, where we go out and we get on their roof, we walk around their property. We have the evaluator's notes and photographs from his evaluation, but that didn't necessarily tell us everything we need to know. So we're going to go out there. When we go out there, we're going to ask questions around things like, is this being done in the context of an insurance claim? This roof is significantly more than $10,000. Where's the rest of the money going to come from? Have you really thought through all of this? This is your obligation in terms of paying the evaluator. If you have an insurance claim, you're going to pay your deductible. The company's going to pay what they're supposed to pay, and OID is going to pay $10,000. We have a couple of cases where the $10,000 is not going to cover the fortifications on some of the larger roofs. It's going to be more than that. So there's going to be an out-of-pocket there that the consumer needs to be educated about and understands. So we walk people through the process exactly as if they had been somebody entering McRoof's universe for any other reason. We're going to start out, where are you? What is your pain? What are the things that you really need to know? Where do we need to go in terms of educating you? If we have people that are in the insurance process, and once we've clearly stated that the $10,000 isn't paying your deductible, the $10,000 isn't paying anything your insurance company doesn't pay, just, making sure that we have that established, first things people hear from us. Then we go through everything that needs to happen on that end of things. Now, what tends to happen is that by the time we get done with our conversations, our introduction, our first site visit, and explaining to them exactly what they're up against in terms of either their insurance, contract, claim process, or any out-of-pocket scenario on needing more than the $10,000, typically what happens is we have now a consumer who understands that my company has the technical competency, the experience, the heart for service about taking care of that consumer and what's in their best interest, not what is in our best interest. And I'm going to tell you that the majority of the time, they may have those three bidders, but they're going to select McRoof when it comes time to make their contractor selection. It just is about knowing what the consumer needs and walking them through the process, no matter where they are, walking them through this with integrity. I've met with people who absolutely do not have an insurance claim, do not have the financial resources to come significantly out of pocket beyond the $10,000 grant money. And there really is not a viable path forward for them within the grant program. And we have to have those conversations, because if we don't have those honestly and ethically, then we're not really serving that consumer. And then when we get into those situations, I'm always working behind the scenes to try to figure out what I personally or what McRoof can do to structure something that is going to take care of their issue and problem for them. But it may or it may not be able to be through the grant program.
Can you outline to me what the differences are between the Certainteed Integrity Roof System and the Fortified standard?
Sure, absolutely, I can. So basically, we're talking about nail it down. Nail it down means deck attachment. All right. Typical roof deck is, say you have a 4x8 sheet of plywood or OSB on a roof deck. The typical roof deck is nailed with common nails and probably has, in a 4-foot dimension of that sheet of decking on a rafter, probably has 4 or 5 nails on it. Okay. So in a sheet of decking, you may have 20 nails in a sheet of decking. In Fortified, that sheet of decking is going to be nailed with ring shank nails, 2 3/8 inch long minimum ring shank nails. A ring shank nail has more than twice the holding power of a common nail. Those nails are going to be applied at 4-inch centers on every rafter. So on every rafter in that 48-inch dimension, you're going to have 13 nails. So 13 times 5 is 65. So what did I just tell you? We've got over 3 times as many nails. We have a ring shank nail versus a common nail. We have nails on 4-inch centers. So the point is, the deck is not going to come off. All right. And so that is the attachment piece of it. So we've nailed it down. Now we're going to seal it up. Seal it up. Okay. So all the joints in the decking where every one of those 4x8 sheets of plywood or OSB join, every joint in that decking is now sealed with an approved, to the standard tape. All right. It can be sealed in other ways. It could be sealed with a full installation of ice and water over the entire roof. It can be sealed with double layers of synthetic underlayment. We seal ours with an approved tape product. All right. It has to be to the standard. You can't just go out and buy duct tape. You can't just go out and buy anything you want. It has to be to the standard. We use zip tape. So we take the zip tape, and that zip tape is applied on every one of those joints, even up to the ridges where the decking comes together at the top of the ridges. Valley joining, that's all, everything is sealed. So now we have a sealed deck. What did we just accomplish? The deck's not going to come off, and it's sealed. No underlayment, no shingles, no anything. What happens if you had huge winds and everything else? The deck, if an EF1 tornado came through, the deck is not going to come off, and water is not going to pour into your house. You may have a drip here or there, but you're not going to have a flood. All right. And we haven't even started putting your roof on yet. We're just at deck attachment and sealing up the deck. All right. Those two things are things that are not done in an integrity roof system. All right. So now let's go to, we're getting ready to start building your roof. Let's go to installing the drip edge, the metal edge. The drip edge is installed in a manner unlike how most roofs are built. Most roofs are built, the drip edge is nailed about every foot. I can tell you that typically most roofs probably aren't even nailed at every foot. I've seen drip edge that had 2 nails in a 10-foot piece. So it's not done correctly. To building code, it would have been nailed every foot. Fortified, every 6 inches in a staggered up and down manner on that drip edge. And the laps where 2 pieces of drip edge join, standard is 2 inches, fortified is 3 inches. And that lap must have 2 nails driven in it. All right. There have to be photos to show this. You have to see this done. This is prescriptive. There's nothing that you can just, well, I'll do this over here. I think I'll do this. This is everything by the book. You have to have 4 photos around the house of that drip edge properly installed. Once you have the drip edge on, now we're getting ready to do our starter course. You have 2 ways of doing starter course. The starter course is that first row of shingles along the eaves and up the rakes. All right? 2 ways of doing starter. You can use an approved self-adhered starter strip. Basically, you roll that out and it's self-adhered. You can use that the way we do it, because Certainteed does not have my Certainteed self-adhered starter strip in Oklahoma City yet. So the way we do it is we do a trowel bed. So that is literally an 8-inch bed of troweled asphalt, no more than an 1/8 thick, so very thin, troweled asphalt all the way around the perimeter. Then we take our approved starter course, in our case, Certainteed Swift Start. We lay that starter course in that trowel bed. What have we done? We have increased the attachment at the edge of the roof. It's called lock it in. That's the concept in Fortified. Nail it down, seal it up, lock it in. All right. So now we're locking it in, because if we can keep the metal on the edge, the starter course on the roof, then we prevent the leading edge damage that typically occurs at the leading edge and the corners of a structure from starting to be broken and giving the wind a place to get underneath and start peeling shingles off of a roof. You see all these roofs just kind of peeled back. They weren't locked in. All right. They were not locked in. That typically is a failure in the sealant around the edges, the way it was installed and everything was done. So in our case, drip edge, asphalt primer, asphalt bed, Certainteed Swift Start starter shingle. That locks us in. We're ready to start installing our roof. So in essence, now we're to shingle coursing. Now we're to the number of nails in shingles. Now we're to proper ventilation, those kinds of things. But essentially, nail it down, seal it up, lock it in. That's Fortified in 3 little phrases. Let me say this: nail it down and seal it up has eliminated 70% of the cost of that storm damage insurance claim. Okay. The roof is gone. Just assume the roof is gone. All right. But there's no water inside that house. There's no decking off of that house. You have eliminated 70% of the potential loss that would have occurred if that roof had not been locked down and sealed up. Because where the real money comes from, and the reason people ask me all the time, why is the insurance company paying for my roof? I don't see anything wrong with my roof. Because the insurance company knows that the damage that has been done by that hail is ultimately going to result in UV degradation in your roof, holes in your roof, and water in your structure. They'd rather pay for your roof, which is quantifiable, than to get into remediation, mold, water issues, having to move people out of their house into temporary living space, having to remove everything from the property and essentially rebuild and disrupt people's lives. That's 70, 80% of the potential loss in that claim. And you take this down to hurricane standards, you take this down to the Gulf Coast. Fortified has neighborhoods where every house in a neighborhood was either destroyed or unlivable, with fortified structures dotted around, that the people didn't have to move out of their house. They didn't have to go somewhere else. They didn't have to rebuild and replace everything on the interior of their homes, because it was nailed down, it was sealed up, and it was locked in. Just that simple.
That is incredible. And so we've talked about why it is so important to have it done correctly on the homeowner's perspective of protecting the asset. But I want to hone in on something you said, and I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding this. This is all being documented during that process, and it goes to an auditing team with IBHS. What happens if the audit finds that it wasn't installed correctly?
The home will not be designated. The home will not be designated. If your contractor basically does not follow the recipe, okay, if this is not prescriptive in the way that they approach this, then there are errors that are irreversible short of tearing it off and starting over. Okay. Hopefully, your evaluator and your contractor are in collaboration. They're talking, they're crystal clear. You know, the grant program is new in Oklahoma. It's new to contractors, it's new to evaluators, some evaluators. We have evaluators in Oklahoma from other parts of the country who have been doing this for 20 years, who are coaching and helping and really facilitating the process. Appreciate that so much because they've been experienced in the grant programs and they've been experienced with IBHS. They understand in a way that we're only learning about. So that's critical that we draw from those resources. The contractors have got to understand, and hopefully you have a contractor who has done training with their staff, who has done training with their crews, who is on site day in and day out, personally, full-time on-site supervision and documentation of everything that's going on, that someone is there catching every issue before it becomes an issue for a consumer. And that's the way we approach these jobs. That's the way that I would coach and counsel any of the roofing community to approach these jobs is, you know, you don't want to be the guy at the end of the day that had a roof that didn't get designated. It's not good for you. It's not good for the program. And it certainly is not good for that consumer. I don't want to see it happen. I hope it never does, but that's what can happen. Now, when I went out on the very first home that was being built under the grant program as the evaluator, there were products on the site that were not acceptable in the program. All right. So the very first thing that I and the contractor did was clean that all up. Take these products and put them in your truck so that they don't accidentally get grabbed and somebody putting them on the roof. Take these nails and put them away. These nails don't work. You know, take this underlayment, put it away. This doesn't work. Hopefully the evaluators and the contractors are working together like that. The second job we did as an evaluator, or that I did as an evaluator with a contractor, decking was being installed incorrectly. I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know this, but OSB decking is intended to be laid horizontally on a roof. It is not intended to be laid vertically. It is not structurally rated decking. You can buy structurally rated OSB, but that is not what's being sent out to all these jobs. And I had a case where at the top of a hip, where you get to kind of that triangular shape, instead of going and getting another sheet of OSB, the roofer had just simply cut a triangular shaped piece of OSB to stick in there, and it was running vertically. I made them take it off, go back over to the center of that ridge, cut that back, put in more than a half sheet of OSB running horizontally. Those are little things, but those are the kinds of things that need to be being paid attention to. We are, Chris, you know this, we as a company, we're going to photograph everything on our fortified roofs. Number one, so that we can podcast and talk about and show people and be able to roll that out for people what it really looks like on a roof. Number two, so that we have all of our documentation. We're going to set a video camera on a tripod on the roof and video the entire thing to where that we're really able to teach, because there's a lot about this that people don't understand. If you have a contractor, you might ask your contractor about their experience with systems roofs or with fortified installations. I'm going to tell you, we have told our subcontractors, number one, Limit the size of the crew that you send to the job, because you don't want this to be a whole bunch of people running all over a roof doing things that nobody's paying attention to. Limit the size of your crew. Make sure that you have ample supervision on top of the roof with the crew. We're going to have bilingual people on the roof, and we're going to have Tad on the roof with his standard and his detail sheets and everything else. We have told the crew, this is a small roof, but you don't come over here thinking you're going to be done in 6 hours. This roof will take you the entire day and maybe into the second day, because you're going to have to do this roof plane by plane. Everything has to be done the way it's supposed to be done before you can move on to anything else. You can't move on to something until the entire roof is stripped and all the decking cleaned up. Okay. Then you start with your decking attachment, and you have to have your photos with a tape measure on the roof showing the nail spacing on the entire roof. Okay. So somebody can't be on the front of the roof still nailing decking, and somebody's on the back of the roof already trying to install shingles. You can't do that. Can't be done that way. So you might question your roofer about their experience with the process, not only from an installation standpoint, but from a documentation standpoint, and how have they managed and mitigated all those kinds of things with their crews, with their subcontractors.
When it comes to this, the Fortified program, it takes longer. What should be an expectation for the how long the roof should take?
Well, if I'll just tell you from my standpoint, I think that a 20 square roof or below is probably going to be a 1-day roof for us. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think if you get anything above 20 squares, and certainly if you get above 20 squares with a redeck involved in it, that definitely is moving you into the second day and beyond. We have two roofs that will be in the 70 to 85 square range. And I'm fully prepared, and those are steep roofs. I'm fully prepared for those roofs to be full week roofs, probably, in order to do everything the way that it needs to be done and provide all of the documentation and detail that we're going to need out of that. Yeah, I would almost figure that 20 square roof in a Certainty Integrity roof system might have been a 6-hour roof for us before. Now it's probably going to be a 10 or 12-hour roof for us. So maybe roughly double the amount of time that you typically would have anticipated. If a roofer told you 3 days, you probably ought to figure a week to 6 days, something like that.
Okay. So definitely be skeptical if they're saying it's going to be about the same amount of time, because you have to get that documentation.
If anyone tells you that they're going to do this roof in 1 day, and I'm going to say if your roof is anything over 25 squares and involves a redeck, and they tell you they're going to do it in 1 day, I might challenge them around moving too quickly, because that's where people are going to miss things. That's where documentation is going to be missed. And that's where the problems are going to come with the submission to IBHS and the audit team.
Makes a lot of sense. We're going to shift focus a little bit, just going towards the future of this program and the industry as a whole.
Okay.
You've been doing roofing for a long time. So how big of a shift are you seeing in things like this, especially here in Oklahoma?
This whole concept and these kinds of things are just now coming into vogue. You know, the attitudes of the roofing industry, for the most part, unfortunately, in Oklahoma, has been to commoditize roofs, to we're just going to give you what you've already got. We're just going to do what we've always done. And the reality is what we've always done doesn't work. What we've always done is going to lead us to that place where insurance will either be unavailable or unaffordable, you know, and when insurance is unavailable or unaffordable, if people can't buy insurance, they can't get mortgages. If they can't get mortgages, they can't buy or build homes. They can't remodel. They can't do all kinds of things. The economic forces that are at play here, from the standpoint of the insurance industry itself, the insurance crisis, as we called it, with us having among the highest rates in the country, Home builders are beginning to understand the implications of all of these things to them. They're beginning to understand the idea that the decisions that we make day in and day out with what we put on people's roofs or how we build their homes and structures is ultimately going to come back to bite us in the pocketbook. They're starting to understand that. Those conversations are starting to take place. So what we need, Chris, and what I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been doing this a long time. I've got broad experience through insurance, residential construction of all types, commercial construction, storm restoration. I see a bigger picture, I think, in some ways than some people do. But I can tell you that the insurance companies will ultimately dictate this. This is not going to be optional. This is going to be the way that you're going to be provided with a marketplace for insurance, at least insurance on roofs. If you're not doing these things, you're probably going to get a roof exclusion. You get a policy that has a roof payment schedule or some very minimal payouts for roof damage. So we need to amplify the conversations. This is the standard to which we should be building roofs if we look at it only from the standpoint of protecting lives, saving lives, and protecting property. And that's what I believe the roofing industry should be doing. I think that's what the home building and remodeling industry should be doing. I think that is the messaging that the insurance companies should be sending out. It shouldn't be from the standpoint of saving the insurance company money on losses. It should be from the standpoint of saving lives and protecting property. Let's get about that. Let's be about that. And let's make sure that's what our focus and our initiatives are about from a roofing industry standpoint, from a building community standpoint, from an insurance standpoint. And we can amplify the messaging and we can drive the change into the marketplace. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I hope there's going to be a whole lot of people that want to collaborate with me in that effort.
So, what advice would you give to a homeowner who may still be on the fence about the grant program and actually building better and really embracing these fortified concepts?
Well, I'll just tell anyone who is in one of the grant zip codes who is eligible to apply for a grant, who owns their property and has insurance on it, certainly worth looking into the grant program and figuring out exactly what their situation is on their roof. If it's somebody who I'm going to see a lady in Tulsa later today who knows she has to have a roof. She doesn't know about the situation from an insurance claim standpoint, but she knows she needs a roof. Well, she's in the zip code, so claim a grant, work through the process and find out how this can all play out for you. You don't ultimately have to go through with the entire process and end up replacing your roof and having your contractor paid the grant money by OID. But you at least owe it to yourself to look into it. Now, as far as the concepts that we're talking about, there's not a consumer in Oklahoma, business or residential, who needs a new roof or who will need a new roof, who should not be considering the concepts presented by Fortified. You need to understand that you need to build better. You need to do a reset and an attitude adjustment as consumers about how important a roof really is to you and to your family and to your business in terms of protecting those lives and protecting that property. And when it comes time to replace it, you need to build better. You need to take these concepts and you need to start upping the game. This is where the real value is going to come from. Don't be a price buyer. Don't be that commodity shopper for a roof when it is the most important weather shedding system in your structure. And, you can't deny where we live and what we face from a weather standpoint. Can't deny that. All right. But you have to understand that you can protect against it. And these are the steps that you can take. What's more important to you? You want to save a few dollars on a roof? If you save a few dollars on a roof, you're going to spend those dollars on insurance because your insurance is going to cost you more. Or would you rather spend a little bit more for a roof and get something that's really going to perform and it's going to provide lasting value for you and your family? And, I'm a value guy. That's where I would weigh in. I think that's the right decision. I think it's ultimately a decision that a lot of people are going to find themselves forced into by the insurance marketplace. But I think that's the way we need to go.
Yeah, makes sense. So, where can people go to learn more about McRoof.us and how to work with your team under this program?
Well, I think the easiest thing to do is if you want to just go and learn a little bit about us and learn about the value proposition, which I think is really important, go to McRoof.us, take a look at the website, learn about us a little bit, take a look at the team, understand that we're really built on the technical competency throughout the spectrum of storm restoration. We are highly credentialed and competent in terms of in damage inspections. My people have designations and credentials. We are extremely competent and have credentials for everything relative to the restoration space, when it comes to dealing with the insurance claims, when it comes to the quality of the work and the systems that we deliver. But we're about driving value to the marketplace. We're about educating consumers about what that universe really should look like to them. We're about telling them some of the things that no one else wants to tell them, because unfortunately most of the roofing industry does not have the value proposition that we have. Most of the roofing industry is concerned about their own pocketbook and concerned about getting ink on paper and signing a contract and collecting a check. That's not what we're about. If at the end of the day in our education to you, we provided value, it leads you to the point where you make a decision that you'd like to work with us, and the ultimate delivery vehicle that you see is in us replacing a roof for you or building a roof for you, that's great. But we are very satisfied with working through a process and leading you to a point where you have education and information that's going to protect you and be valuable for you, whether you ever do business with us or not. So McRoof.us, the best place to start. From there, you'll be talking with one of my family members, probably Carley, my daughter. There's no better person to roll out for you kind of the difference that is McRoof. And I welcome you and invite you to start down that journey, to invite us into a relationship with you, your family, your business, see if we can provide value for you.
That's phenomenal. And I think anyone who's watching this video is already getting a very small taste of the McRoof universe and really the additional education and value and specific care that you guys take for your homeowners. And I really hope they found the value in this as well. So thank you so much, Scott, for joining us, and looking forward to being able to share this message with the rest of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the time. Have a good day.